Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am McKenna Jordan, and I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. I'm very excited to be hosting one of our 1 o'clock overseas events today. We're going to be joined by Clare Mackintosh, and the lovely Lisa Gardner has agreed to guest interview. As many of you know, my favorite people are guest interviewers because it means I don't have to do that. So we're always very grateful for that. We've had a lot of events this week. I think we're going to wind up hosting around 25 authors this week, and we have a lot of events coming next week too. So make sure to check out our virtual event calendar at murderbooks.com. John's going to be back on here tomorrow. If you're a cozy mystery fan, we're doing 2 Kensington Cozy Con panels. Each one will have 3 or 4 authors. One is about paranormal mysteries and one's about bibliomysteries. So make sure to tune back in for that. Also, before I bring on the authors, Clare Mackintosh's new book is Hostage. And Lisa Gardner, we have her latest in paperback before she disappeared. For more information about the authors or to order books, which we would greatly appreciate, I'm going to put a link in the comments shortly. If you have questions, don't be shy. We'll get to those after they chat. I'll be back on to moderate those questions. Also, we're going to have a slightly shorter talk than normal today. It's going to be about 40 minutes instead of an hour. So make sure to get those questions in there so we can get to them a little bit sooner. Okay, so the star of the show today with Hostage, Clare Mackintosh. Lovely to see you.
Hi, great to be here.
It's so nice to meet you. We've never met before, but thanks to these virtual events, here we are.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm trying my best to sort of feel like I'm traveling, and actually I am quite tired, so that replicates the jet lag that I would have if I was touring the States.
Perfect. I'm tired as well, so I'll pretend I came over to see you, and then we'll have it all sorted out. Okay, let me go ahead and do your official bio really quickly. Clare Mackintosh is an award-winning New York Times and international best-selling author. She spent 12 years on the police force in England and has written for The Guardian, Good Housekeeping, and other publications. Translated into 40 languages, her books have sold more than 2 million copies worldwide. Clare lives in North Wales with her husband and their 3 children. We're also going to be joined by Lisa Gardner. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's always good to see you. Thank you again for doing this today.
Oh, no problem.
All right. Lisa Gardner is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of 20 suspense novels, including The Neighbor, which won Thriller of the Year from the International Thriller Writers Association. An avid hiker, traveler, and cribbage player, she lives in the mountains of New Hampshire with her family. I'm going to go away. I'm going to let you guys chat, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy it. I'll be here the whole time. If you want, just call me back on whenever, but I will be on in a little bit for questions. Have fun.
Thank you.
So Clare, it is such a pleasure to be here. You and I kind of discovered each other a few years ago now, and in the way virtual world looks, we've swapped emails and Instagram, and now this is us in person for the first time.
I know, I feel it's a bit like when you're sort of doing online dating, and you start with the messages, and then maybe you have a chat, and then maybe one day we'll actually have a date.
Well, the world opens up. I would love to return to England, so that would be amazing. But in the meantime, we're here to talk about your new book, Hostage. Came out today. I have books, you have books. I had the great pleasure of reading this early on, and what a phenomenal thriller. It is the adrenaline-packed rush of kind of the hijack scenario is very much domestic suspense, and it also has elements of the closed room mystery. How you got all of that into one book? So that's my first question for you, Clare. How did you come up with Hostage, and was all of that planned from the start?
It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot to go in one book. So Hostage came about from lots of different influences. So I, like you, I travel a lot in normal times. And I think when you travel with work, you're generally not traveling with anyone. So, if I'm going on vacation, I've got my family with me and I'm sort of preoccupied. But when I'm going on tour, I'm going to a book festival, it's just me. And that means I'm watching people and I'm, making up little stories, and I'm wondering who they're meeting and why they're traveling. And, you're just constantly, aren't you, creating backstories. And so I was very interested in the idea of what takes somebody on a plane, and Hostage is set on a really long flight, a 20-hour flight from London to Sydney. And that particular route isn't happening yet. It's been delayed, but it's a route that is about to launch. And 20 hours is such a long time to be with complete strangers. You know, it's a very weird environment that we put ourselves in. Like, where else would you go to sleep? Like, you know, a foot away from a complete stranger. That, I just think that on its own is such a nuts idea. And so this kind of, you know, going to the bathroom and, you know, washing your face and sleeping and eating with all these strangers it felt like the perfect place to, you know, to set a domestic thriller. And I'm really glad that you said that, because the idea of a hostage or a hijack on a plane is not a new thing. You know, there are lots and lots of hijack books and films. But what I write are books that really focus on the dynamics between members of a family and between that family and another family. And, you know, it's personal relationships. So although there are elements to Hostage that are very, very sort of traditional thriller and high octane action thriller, actually, it always comes back to those networks and the emotional journey that individual people go on.
I will say, as a reader, character is actually what draws me in. And what first captivated me by your work, I'm trying to think of what the first book of yours I read, but it's the family dynamics. It's meeting these characters that feel so incredibly real and human and could be any one of us, but of course now cast into extraordinary circumstances, which I think is somewhat the definition of a domestic thriller right there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
Ordinary people, isn't it?
Yes.
People like you or me. And because what our books do is they prompt the reader to say, what would I do if I was in that situation? What would I do if it happened to me? And I think I've learned quite a lot about character. You know, it's the more novels you write, obviously, the more you learn, and the more you read, the more you learn. And in the beginning, you know, you asked whether I had everything planned out from the start. And I do plan a lot. I do a lot of research. I know you're a real research fan.
Yes, but I don't
lot of planning.
You got me beat there.
And so my first three thrillers, I think, were very kind of plot led. So the characters were important, but I was very much driven by the plot. And then I stepped outside my thrillers briefly and wrote I Let You Go, which is a family drama. And I wanted to talk to you about this because I've got so many questions for you as well. I know you're interviewing me, but it's a two-way thing. And when I wrote After the End, it was such a character-driven novel that I found that when I came back to thrillers and I was writing Hostage, that actually I'd learned a great deal about putting character first, and so what I've got is a book that actually is very much a character driven thriller. And so what I wanted to ask you, because you started your career writing romance, and romance is very, very character driven, isn't it? And so I was wondering if that was something you kind of, if it had taught you quite a lot about character books.
Yeah, and actually there's a whole like almost graduating class of us, you could say. It's myself, Tess Gerritsen, Iris Johansson, Sandra Brown, Nora Roberts. We all started in romance. And then
Lisa Jules did the same, right? Yeah. Lisa Jules' books were very much kind of romantic comedies.
Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons we rose so quickly up on the bestseller list is because we already knew how to do the character right. And in a thriller novel, the what is kind of, to a certain extent, a given. People are going to be in danger. The more you can get readers to care about the who. So I really want to talk about the who in your book, because I found your family fascinating. We have Mina, the wife, who is going to be the flight attendant on the plane. We have Adam, the husband, who we know is keeping some secrets. And then my absolutely positive favorite character, Sophia, the 5-year-old daughter who's adopted and has separation anxiety. And you give such a great, accurate portrayal of that, because I work with an organization that does at-risk families and adoption scenarios. And I was just so touched by not just your research that clearly went into the family itself, but your ability to create what feels like such a real family with all of its flaws, but you have us rooting for them every step of the way. How do you do all that? And then teach me.
It definitely started with Sophia, and it started actually with a conversation with a friend of mine who has an 8-year-old daughter who's adopted, 8 or 9, and she was sharing something online. She was sharing a very, very special moment that after 8 years of being the mother to this daughter, that the daughter had for the very first time come and instigated a hug, had come and asked for a hug for the first time. And, you know, so much was going on in my head, you know, firstly, so lovely and emotional and wonderful, but also, oh my goodness, 8 years of never having your child running up to you and wanting a hug, you know. And I was talking to her and I said, you know, why, you know, how does this work? And she was very, very lovely and happy to talk to me about it. And she explained all the issues that a child, even when they're adopted at such a young age, and this particular girl was adopted within the first 8 months, just as my character Sophia is. But those first few months of crying and having nobody come give a lasting impact. And I was thinking about this and creating this character Sophia, who, you know, has a very similar backstory to this real life child, and marrying that with my own experiences. So I have a daughter who has autism, and some of the issues that we face as a family are very much what Adam and Mina go through in Hostage, and particularly the fact that I found that my own relationship with my husband can be so influenced by what's happening with the kids. And we will find ourselves kind of, you know, we're all getting at each other. And actually, it's nothing to do with either of us or what we've done. It's just the sort of the dynamics of having a child with additional needs who you know, has a different relationship with each of us. And so what I wanted was a triangle. You know, this very, very intense, wonderful, loving, challenging triangle of mum, dad, and daughter. I didn't expect Sophia to play such a pivotal role in the story, and that's an area where plotting and creativity sort of deviated, and I let the character take over and do what she does, which of course we won't talk about.
Yeah. So, but let's talk about what goes into making the novel then, because you're already saying that you plot and plan. I do not. I'm a hot mess. I envy you authors that know what you're doing each morning, because I just started by staring at the screen and going, please, 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 let something happen. So how much of this book did you know in advance? What is your writing process?
So my writing process is to plan it out. So is to spend a few weeks, months with it mulling over, normally when I'm finishing the book before. So, you know, there's nothing written down, but I'm thinking through stuff. And that's what I'm doing when I'm, you know, you're probably doing it when you're hiking. I'm doing it when I'm horse riding or swimming in the lake. But it's the perfect time, isn't it? You're kind of, your body is busy, and you're looking at stuff, and you're outside in the fresh air, and your mind is making connections and making stories and building characters. So that's all happening while I'm doing copy edits on the book before.
Very smart. Multitasking. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I couldn't do is write 2 at once. You know, it's got to be different stages. So copy edits is very kind of task driven, isn't it? I don't need my creative brain for that. So I can kind of use that side of it.
Readers out there, copy editing is like, you know, did you mean a comma or a period? So it's the kind of stuff that drives us storytellers crazy, but it is highly necessary.
and all those awful errors you make. So I made some terrible mistakes in this book, actually, which I will tell you about. I've not told anyone about it. So you, Lisa, you obviously read a really early copy. So you read it before the copy editors. Unfortunately, when people pick up the finished copy, there won't be these in it. But I have Mina talking about working during 9/11. She would have been 12.
Good copy editors do catch that.
Yeah. So copy editor saved me from that, and 2 or 3 other really, really big things that, just didn't occur to me. So,
I had a book where the character's eyes were blue, but once she was dead in the morgue, they had turned brown. It doesn't actually work that way at all. But
I don't think that happens. They are amazing. My UK copy editor was brilliant, and then my US copy editor picked up another couple of things the more eyes on a book, the better. And I always say to readers, if they see stuff that's wrong,
yes,
tell us, because we can get that corrected. The next time it's reprinted, the ebook can be corrected right away. So
it is nice to know.
It is nice to know.
Right. So you're copy editing and you're planning.
Yeah. So then the old book has done and dusted, gone to the printers, and now I'm ready to start. And I plot the main beats. So what I do is I get my big whiteboard or a big bit of paper, and I write my timeline on it. So Hostage was kind of easy because it's 20 hours, so it's quite a sort of a linear thing. But then, of course, I've got backstory, and I've got to work out. I know what Mina's backstory is, and I know that it relates to what's going on now. But when during this timeline, do I want to give you, the reader, that information for it to have the most emotional and the most impact? So I put my main beats on, and I sort of think, well, I know that this big twist is going to happen, and I know it's going to happen pretty much in the middle of the book. So that's going there. And then I know that's going there. And then gradually I'm putting things in using Post-it notes and scribbling on it. And it does get a bit of a mess, but it's almost, it takes shape in my head as I'm kind of taking, as it's working on the paper. And what I end up with actually is something that enables me to see the shape of the book, because what I want to see isn't so much what happens, but how it's going to feel to the reader. So I will mark a scene that is really high octane, and I'll put it up there on my sheet.
Oh, gotcha.
Then I'll have like a kind of what I call a recovery beat.
Yes.
And it will be down here, because what I want by the end is that my story is looking kind of like this, like a roller coaster, because if it's all up here, that's not exciting. And if it's all down here, that's not exciting. So it helps me with pace.
Yeah.
And then when I've got that, then I will write a chapter outline. I know this is really kind of forensic, and it always feels so uncreative.
Is this because you're a former investigator? Is this how it's coming out?
I'm quite passionate about the fact that when you're an investigator, when you're a police officer, you're a storyteller, and what you're doing is you have this huge responsibility to use your words to tell someone else's story, someone who perhaps doesn't have a voice anymore because they've been murdered or they're not articulate. And it's your job to write their statement and to, find the narrative threads that the CCTV holds and the forensics and the witnesses, and work out who the unreliable narrators are, and then kind of weave them together so that you can present a compelling story to an audience, to a court. And so, I think my process is quite policey. It's quite kind of,
yes. Your whole career has been telling stories.
Absolutely. And then once I've got my chapter outline, that's when I write. And then it's a kind of, that's when the creative process takes over a little bit. So I think I know where I'm going, and I've got my kind of route map, but it's like, a diversion pops up and I just follow it, or I get to a crossroads and I think, what, that road looks more interesting. I'm going to go down there. So I let myself go off all the time.
Oh, good.
And the twists that I've planned, generally speaking, the twists I thought were going to happen do happen, but more twists come in, or more reveals, or, So I work through 10,000 words a week until that first draft is done. And then it's in pretty bad shape. And then I tear it up and do it all again.
I love you for that alone. It just makes me feel better.
Oh God, I throw away so many words. And every time I write a book, I think I'm going to be more efficient. You know, I plan, and a planner shouldn't have to throw stuff away because we plan. But it's just the process, you know, and the more I throw away, the better words replace it. And, you know, that's how it works.
So I've been writing for 30 years now, and it's always 3 drafts. The first one has too little words, details. The second has too many. And the third is just right. And why I can't just do that by now, the first time out, but no, it is always 3 drafts.
Yeah. And so when I do a second draft, I start a new document. So I don't take that old draft and start editing on it. I've got my big computer screen, and on the left is my old document, and on the new is my brand new document. So I, you know, obviously I carry stuff across, but I pretty much treat it like a new document, because it's unwieldy, isn't it? You've got like, you know, 100,000 word or even a, you know, 70,000 word document to try and move stuff around. And I find it's like kind of knitting with jelly, and I can't do that.
I love that analogy. Now, you've mentioned you love research, and well, for, you know, suspense fans, you have an amazing background as, you know, an investigator over in England. But this book, it's really Nina's story being a flight attendant on this, you know, 20-hour, you know, Virgin flight. How did you? The details are, you know, very spot on. How did you do all that research?
Right, it's important, isn't it? That I mean, I've talked to Lisa Jewell about this quite a lot, because she does no research and is very kind of, you know, out and proud about that. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies, because I want to know that
I want to know
that I've got it right. And I look at it a little bit like grammar rules, that I think you need to know the rules, and then you can decide whether to break them or not. And, you know, I do break lots of rules, both in grammar and in research. And so I will look at the facts. You know, this is how you fly a plane. This is how you get in and out of a flight deck. And then I'll think, okay, so I can't have it exactly like that for reasons. But actually, it could happen like this. This is plausible. You know, it has once happened like that. And so we can go with that. And Sophie Hannah talks about her kind of rule for things is not whether something is probable, but whether it's possible.
Yeah.
And if it's possible once, then we'll run with that, you know. So I gather lots of facts, and I spoke to lots and lots of pilots, flight attendants. If I could have become a flight attendant for a year, I'd have done that, because it's like it's my dream job. I would love to do that. But sadly, they don't let you just play at being a flight attendant. So I spent a lot of time on forums, because some of my contacts were slightly reluctant to talk to me about security issues, you know, for obvious reasons. But I had a few kind of off the record conversations, and they said, look, you can't name me, but this is where we keep, you know, like an axe, and this is where we keep this, that, and the other. And what I then did was go online and search for that in open source, you know, websites. And flight attendants are incredibly indiscreet. They have all these message boards where they're talking about passengers, and they're using all the jargon, and it's brilliant. And I found so much stuff on their little anecdotes that made things feel. So I think in Hostage, I talk about a dead body, a kind of a little anecdote about a body that somebody put in in the bathroom. So somebody died on board a plane, and the flight attendants thought, well, we'll put this unfortunate body in the bathroom and lock the door, and then, you know, he'll have some respect. But then rigor mortis set in. And, you know, it's quite a confined space, and it was very, very difficult to remove. And so those sorts of things, you know, those kind of throwaway little conversations, what they do is they help you as a writer channel that role. And even if you never put those stories in, you're in the right mindset, and you can write authentically.
My favorite part of interviewing anyone, whether it's law enforcement or a cool job or just the experiences, like you said, we can't try on for a year, is always the anecdotal stories, the stuff that you didn't even know you needed to hear till you hear it. But one of the things I loved about Hostage that I thought you did such an amazing job is, on board, this is our closed room mystery. We have this airline. And like you said, it's a strangely intimate thing for all of these strangers to be sharing space for 20 hours. And you have all the, technical details right, but the group dynamics, how as tension builds, the passengers can fall apart, come together. All of that to me was just incredibly well done. So I guess we can add psychological thriller to part of your mix here too.
Yeah, I did. I found it really hard though, Lisa, to be honest, because it's the first book I've written. It's the first locked room I've written, and that's a challenge because you can't just suddenly have someone just walking on halfway through the book, twirling their moustache and solving it all. You've only got the people that you've got at the start. And so you have to make sure they're the right people with the right information. And you can't change the environment really. I mean, obviously the plane will, do different things, but basically you're just, in a box in the sky. And so I read lots of Ruth Ware, who does closed room mysteries really, really well. And I love her writing. So she was a really big influence. And I reread Murder on the Orient Express, because this is a kind of, Orient Express meets Con Air kind of vibe. So I did quite a lot of reading. And the other challenge is that when you're introducing a lot of people, that can be really confusing for the reader, can't it? You're suddenly throwing more characters, and so I had to make each of those voices very distinct, so the reader doesn't get confused and kind of go, God, who are all these people? And actually, in the first draft, that was a big mess with so many different points of view. And so in the second draft, I approached it with seat numbers. And so what we have is a dozen or so voices who are very, very clearly positioned as, this is the seat number, this is my name, and they're talking in first person directly to the reader. So it's very different to the rest of the story. And that immediately did two things. It helped reduce the confusion and it upped the tension massively. Because suddenly we were inside the head of a dozen passengers and we knew more than Mina knew.
It was really fun. It really ratchets up the tension, the stakes. So talk to us a little bit about Adam, the husband. We know he's a police officer. We love him, we hate him, we just can't decide. I mean, you said,
men though, right?
Marriage matter.
Yeah, well, so I quite liked writing about a police officer when this wasn't a police procedural. It was. I've written police officers before, but they've been the investigator, and so it was quite nice to take him out of that. This is him at home, and we do see him at work briefly, and the fact that he is a police officer is relevant to what's going on in his life. But actually, we see him first and foremost as a dad. And he spends, and I've never written a father-child relationship before. I've always really focused on mother-child, on motherhood as a theme. And I really liked the fact that we had this very intense relationship between Adam and Sophia, and it forces him to reflect quite a lot on the secrets he's been keeping and his marriage and the way he's behaved. And he is ultimately a good guy, but he's got himself into a bit of a pickle, as we would say in England.
So what was your favorite part of working on this book?
Apart from just finishing it.
I love you again.
The ending. Literally not just the process of ending it, but I got to the end of this book, and then I suddenly realized that although I had finished my plan of what was happening in this book, there was something else was going to happen that was so perfect for the story and the characters that I literally sat at my desk and kind of laughed to myself because I was so happy that they'd done this, and I hadn't foreseen it, but it was absolutely right. And that was just, it's still it's my favorite bit of the book. I can't wait for, I've already had a few early readers message me to say, oh my God, that ending. So that is my favorite bit.
So you've certainly written quite a few different kinds of books. I mean, you've been out since 2016, so 5 novels. What are you thinking for the next one? Another thriller, domestic? What are you thinking?
I think I might be about to write a series.
Oh, fun. I accidentally did that myself. So how are you going to accidentally do it?
Oh, this is brilliant. So did you accidentally know, like while you were writing the first book, or was it afterwards?
It was afterwards. I just came up with more for that character and then more for that character kind of thing.
Okay, so I'm kind of thinking that while I'm writing this book, so like you, I always do 3 drafts. So I'm in between 2 and 3 at the moment. On Monday, I start the 3rd draft. I've got a month to get that done. And I'm fairly confident that this is a world and a character that now I want to come back to. There's so much to it. And so I'm writing it with that in mind, and it's slightly different because suddenly and I was talking, so I did an event a couple of nights ago, and Lee Child dropped in, which was really lovely. And so I was picking his brains on this, and he was saying, you'll be tempted to hold things back and think, oh, I'll do that in the next book or the next one. And he said, don't, put it all into this book, because if you don't put it all into the first book, there might not be another book. So I'm trying not to do that, and but just leaving the character slightly more open, perhaps. So rather than the kind of the closure that most of my characters find at the end of a standalone, I'm just leaving it slightly more fluid, I suppose. So that's a sort of police procedural murder mystery set on a lake where the border between England and Wales runs through the lake, and there's a body that floats through the lake.
Oh, interesting.
A joint investigation between 2 countries, so kind of slight The Bridge overtones. So that's fun.
Yeah, The Bridge is fun.
Yeah, and then I'm busy planning 2023's thriller, which is partly set in America, and is about a woman who married a man on death row, and then he escapes.
Excellent.
So I'm doing loads of death row research at the moment, which is such a rabbit warren, because that's the problem with research, isn't it? You could just go on and on and on and on, and it's knowing when to stop and start actually doing some work.
There's this fine line between productive and procrastination. All right. Anything else you want to tell your readers? And it's so exciting to have you today. And Hostage it's such a good book. I'm so excited the world gets to experience it now.
Oh, bless you. You're so lovely. And I really genuinely hope that we can sit and have a coffee or a glass of wine sometime and talk about writing and hiking and all sorts. No, I'm really excited to be out in America. It's the first time I've had a simultaneous publication date between the UK and the US. Normally I'm sort of having to manage frustrated readers in one country who have to wait. So it's really lovely to be out on the same day and with the same cover. And do you normally have different covers for your books in the UK and the US?
Normally, for my last one before she disappeared, the covers were at least very similar. It's still slightly different, but you're right. To have the same cover is unique, but great for placement.
And it means my confusion level is sort of less. I don't have to kind of go, what events am I doing? What book do I hold up? So that's been really great. And it's lovely. It's lovely to see so much support from readers in the States. And, please do pick up a copy, leave a review, borrow it from the library, whatever you do. But it'd be great to hear what you think of it.
Excellent. Great job, ladies. That was a great chat. There's no questions. I think you covered it all. But I have a question quickly, because I've been staring at it this whole time. Claire, what is comprising the penguin books on the wall behind you?
Oh, this is my desk is probably very messy. So this is my desk here. This is where I work. if I can turn it around. And so look, my computer behind the lights, my computer is just behind the lights. And then behind me is this wall with wallpaper with vintage Penguin books on it. So quite often my Zoom background, if I'm in a meeting, is Penguin books, which is terrible because I'm not published by Penguin. So every time I have a meeting, I'm like, guys, I'm really sorry that I've got like a rival publishing house behind me, but they're really pretty.
Yeah, anyone who's a bibliophile knows those are the vintage Penguin covers, and I have been sitting there so jealous. I didn't know if it was like gift wrap and you had wrapped something. It's actual wallpaper. That's amazing.
Actual wallpaper. I do love it very much.
Yeah, I am jealous. I love it as well. So anytime we have a guest interviewer, I always take a moment to let them talk about either their most recent release or what they're working on. So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about your most recent work?
Oh, so this is a happy day for me. As of today, I have a complete draft of my 2022 book.
Excellent.
Before She Disappeared starts a new series for me. This one I actually did kind of plan for Frankie Elkin, who's an everyday woman who's obsessed with solving missing persons cold cases. And she travels town to town to do this. So in the new book, One Step Too Far, which I finished today, and I finally know who did it, she returns. And this time she's going in the woods. It's a search for a missing hiker. And somewhat like you talked about Murder on the Orient Express, I was inspired by And Then There Were None. So 8 go into the woods, 8 do not come back out.
Wow.
It was kind of fun to figure out who I was going to kill each day.
Yeah.
It was a good 2021 book.
You do this brilliant thing, because what you've got then with Frankie is it's a bit like Reacher, isn't it? You get to basically write a standalone book each time. Yes. New place, new mystery, new characters, but with your hero, and that's a pretty cool thing. So readers can read them all as a series, but actually they can also just dive straight into one of them.
It intrigued me, having always done these police procedurals, and I do not have your background at all, but I also, they're also domestic books. Is Frankie's kind of both. I mean, it ends up being a bit procedural, but she's just an everyday person. So you kind of get to think, okay, if I wanted to find someone who'd been missing for 5 years and I have access to a computer and I'm kind of a creative thinker, what would you do? That's what you have to work with. Go.
Well, and you're never going. It's never a bad move to go with a Christie-esque trope too. Like, yeah. I mean, we're all suckers for those. At least I am, speaking for myself. So it's always a good thing. Well, I'm sorry that today had to be a little bit shorter. I told both of our guests before we started that we had a little bit of a staffing issue at the store, so I have to cut this short and head to the bookstore. But it's been an absolute delight. Thank you both so much. Congratulations on Hostage, Claire. We're lots of fans of yours at the store, and it's gonna do great, and we can't wait to hand sell it. And Lisa, as always, it's a delight to see you. I'm going to sign us off for the afternoon with our quiet, shy crowd. So anyway,
thank you, everyone. Thank you, McKenna.
Bye-bye. Bye.